Good morning, everyone. Here we have a speech given by Lubavitcher Rebbe in the year 1950. 1959. And after that, we'll see if we have time. There's another speech given by Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1951. Yeah, 51. Okay, let's do the first one. Ready? Here we go. Chodesh IYAR, this month of IYAR. This is the month which comes after Passover. The month of Passover is called Nisan, first month of the Jewish year, Nisan. And after that comes the month of IYAR, that's this month. And then comes the month of Sivan. So the month of Nisan, right in the middle, is the holiday of Passover. And that's the first month. And in the third month, right in the beginning, the sixth day of Sivan, that's the holiday of Shavuot, when we receive the Torah. And if you count, it comes out to be exactly 50 days between Passover and Shavuot. And each one of those 50 days is a mitzvah, a commandment. Counting the Omer, which we talked about several times before. There was a commandment that when the Jews came into the land of Israel, as soon as they arrived the first time, and they had their first crop, barley crop, as the day after Passover, they had to offer up an offering of a handful, whatever, of this barley grain, and the rest of the Kohanim ate, and that was that bundle of barley that was called the Omer, and it was a commandment to bring it. And until they brought it, you couldn't eat any grains in Israel until they brought it from that year's crop. And then they would count every day, was called counting from the Omer. They would count the days. Count the days. Today is the first day from the Omer, the second day of the Omer, until they got up to 49 days. That's it. That's going to go. So it comes out that in a way, the month of IYAR is the holiest month of the year, because every single day of that month has a commandment in it. And that's what the Rebbe is going to talk about. Let's go. Chodesh IYAR, the month of IYAR, Hatamai. This is in Yiddish, right? The Rebbe spoke in Yiddish, and so this was very good. Chodesh IYAR, the month of IYAR, Hatamayla has an advantage, something special. Oif Allah Chad She'ashanam, all the other months of the year, middem, by the fact, vos, which yeder tug, every single day from Chodesh, every single day from that month is verbunden, is connected with a commandment. The commandment of counting the Omer. Right, counting the Omer. Only the last half of the month of Nisan, after Passover, we count the Omer. And only the first 5 days of the month of Sivan do we count the Omer. But the month of IYAR, which joins them together, every single day is a commandment. In Chodesh Nisan, in the month of Nisan, is nor the Tzveiter help. Only the second half of the month is connected with Sfirat Omer. And the month of Sivan is only the beginning of the month connected with Sfirat Omer. But in the month of IYAR, there is all the days, every day of the month is connected with this. Hagam, even though the row from Chodesh Tishrei, the majority of the month of Tishrei, is also Ungans Chodesh Nisan, in the month of Nisan. The law is in Judaism, Zokmen nit kein Tachnun. Tachnun is a prayer which say, with the Jewish people, religious Jews, we pray 3 times a day, right? In the morning and in the afternoon and the evening. It corresponds to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it also corresponds to the sacrifices. There was a morning sacrifice and an afternoon sacrifice, and in the evening they took out the ashes from all this. So the 3 times a day. Well, the first 2 times of the day, part of the prayer, one of the prayers, is a confession prayer called Tachanun. we're beseeching God to forgive us. And so this is only said on regular days, but any days which are happy days, we don't say this prayer. On the holidays and Shabbat, we don't say. On the holidays, we don't say. And on Yom Kippur, for instance, we do say. But we don't say. Okay, so on happy days, we don't say. So it ends up that on the month of Nisan, the law is that on the month of Nisan, the second half of the month of Tishrei and the whole month of Nisan, we don't say this supplication prayer. So that means it's sort of a little bit holy, right? On Nisan, on the month of Nisan, it says, HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim. There's a sentence in the Torah that says, this month will be for you the beginning of the month, the beginning of the months. And there's one commentator, great genius person called the Shelah, Shnei Luchot Brit, Rabbi Shaya Horowitz, that he lived like, almost 400 years ago. And he said that this shows that every day of the month of Nisan, every day of the month of Nisan is like Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh in Judaism is also a holiday. When there was a temple, it used to be more of a holiday. But the first day of every month is also sort of like a holiday. So he says the month of Nisan, some people say that every day is like Rosh Chodesh. So if so, not only IYAR every day is special, also the month of Nisan every day is special because it's called like Rosh Chodesh. And also we don't say Tachanun in the month of Nisan. So that's sort of special, month of Nisan. Zayin and the milas from Yemei Tishrei, but these special things about the month of Tishrei and the month of Nisan, we don't say Tachanun, and it's called the Rosh Chodesh. This is not connected with the service of man. This is only just a thing on itself that God put on it. But the tag from Chodesh IYAR, but the days of the month of IYAR, haben in sich a Maila was is verbunden mit avodas Adam, connected with the service of man, mitzvah spirit omer. Every single day is a commandment, and even more, the day itself is a commandment. We're counting the day. We're not doing. It's not that we're doing something on the day and making a blessing on tefillin or on. So we're making a blessing on the day. Something like how we make a blessing on the holidays, right? We make kiddush. And so every day of the month of IYAR is a blessing. We make a blessing on the counting of the Omer. The Sheikhs and Spheres of Omer, this whole idea of counting the Omer to the commandment, the days of the commandment is mer vi Sheikhs un anderes manim. The connection between the days of Spirit Omer and the commandment of counting the Omer is different. All the other holidays, they have special commandments which are in those holidays. In anderes manim, there is a commandment, is the mitzvah nit su tan mitetag gufo. It doesn't deal with the actual day. Also, the same thing with the eating matzah on Passover. This is a commandment which is separate from the time. When this date comes, we eat matzah. When this day comes, we sound the shofar. When this day comes, we'll take a lulav etrog. The commandment's separate from the day. But just the commandment of the mitzvah happens to be in that day. But Sfirat HaOmer, the commandment is counting the day itself. In other words, the day itself, the days of IYAR, each day itself is counted. So the day itself becomes the commandment. The Maila from Chodesh IYAR, the whole thing of the month of IYAR, is which every single day itself becomes a commandment. You're counting the days. Now, you have to understand also the idea of what is a commandment. In Judaism, a commandment, the word mitzvah means connection. So every day is a connection between us and God and us. The commandments are the will of God. So it explains in the book, the Tanya, that when a Jew does a commandment, he becomes like an extension of God's will. Oh, 1 second. he becomes an extension of God's will, like your hand becomes an extension of your will. What you want to pick up your fork in order to eat something, but it doesn't happen without your hand doing it. But your hand doing it, that's you. So your hand is like part of you. It's just your will, extension of your will. When a Jew does a commandment, as that commandment becomes an extension of God because it's God's will. So if so, the month of IYAR, when every single day is a commandment. So it means that every single day is this connection to God. We're connecting to God, God is connecting to us, but it's also done by means of our work. The commandment from counting the Omer, there's 49 days, this is relevant to every single day. Also, them, in addition to the fact, in addition to this, is the tzelem, the counting itself, relevant to all of the days of the Sphira, to the Friediker Tag und zu the Späterdiker Tag. The counting of Omer is relevant. Each day completes the days after it and the days before it. There's different opinions about what exactly is this commandment of counting the Omer. If it's just one big commandment to count 49 days, because that's the language of the thing, you have to count 49 days. 49 days, and if you don't count all 49, so there's no commandment. So if so, we should only make a blessing at the end or at the beginning, when like every other commandment. But no, we say every single day is separate, every single day is important, every single day is unique and holy because we're counting it. But not only that, every day depends on every other day. So two things separately. Every day is dependent on all the days before it because it's a commandment to count 49 days. But on the other hand, every single day itself uniquely will make a blessing on every day. So every day itself is unique. Biz does is benogea oich to the kololos hachana to Kabbalas Torah. And not only that, this is also a preparation for the receiving of the Torah. It says that one of the Midrash says that one of the lessons from counting the Omers, the Jews, when they left Egypt, they knew they were going to receive the Torah, so they counted every day. They were in anticipation, and not only in anticipation, but also in preparation, because they knew that in order to receive the Torah, that the Torah was going to be commandments for day-to-day life. And it depended for a tremendous degree on their attitude, the attitude of the Jews. Doing the Torah depends on your attitude. It's not just a bunch of, like you're a mechanic or something like that, or even a doctor, right? A doctor or a mechanic, he doesn't have to have any particular connection with the car that he's fixing or the person that he's fixing up. He just has to know mechanically what to do. But Judaism is not like that. Judaism is an essential connection to God. It's very, very important, your attitude toward God. And when they left Egypt, they didn't even know what God was. They were in Egypt, they were just concerned with themselves all the time. They were am I going to get killed? Am I going to fill my quota of bricks? And so in order to stop being servants of Paro and start being servants of God, so they had to have some sort of a change of, values, of preferences. Well, there's a better word, what do they call it? Change of, there's another word for it. I'll think of it later. Anyway, you have to have a whole change of outlook in life. Not priorities. Okay. This means in Chodesh IYAR, the month of IYAR, that's the month we're in now, right? Is done inyan was mitzad im seinen alle tag from Chodesh gleich. So in one way, all of the days are exactly the same because they're all a commandment. They all have the same commandment. You're counting the day. But on the other hand, every day is different because we're counting a different number of days. Gimel. Bichlal in general, this is also what teaches us to appreciate what time is. Every day is special. Every day is potentially holy. Bichlal in general, in the months from the year, there are differences between the beginning of the year and the end of the year. There's a book called the Pardes. It's a Kabbalah book by a man called Moshiach. It says that the 12 months of the year, they correspond to the 12 different combinations of God's name. God's name has 4 letters in it. 2 of them are the same. Yud, and then Hey, and then Vav, and then Hey. So if you take 3 letters and you make permutations 4 times, so it comes out to be 12. So there's 12 possible permutations of God's name, right? Starting with the letter Yud first, and then the Yud, Hey, Vav, and then Yud, Vav, Hey, and then the second Hey and the Hey, etc. So it comes out to be 12 different permutations. In Shem, in the name of God, Zayin and Faran, fear also, there are 4 letters. Zayin and Oichin, Yeder, Chodesh, so every single letter is Faran, fear Vachen, 4 weeks in every single month. On the Yomim, Nosafim, and the additional days, so they're extra to the 4 weeks. Okay, so because every month has either 29 or 30 days. In any case, there are 4 weeks in every single month. Every month corresponds to a different permutation of God's name. And every week is a different letter of that permutation. Now we have to understand what does it mean, God's name? God's name. God's name is not just like a name that's written in a book, and it's not some sort of a magical incantation. God's name is the creative force that we're created from. And with God's name is not part of the world. It's not part of our religion. It's not part of of Judaism or part of reality. Reality comes from these letters of God's name. So these letters are very, very powerful. They're forces of creation. Every single month has a different permutation, and every week has a different letter in that particular permutation of that month. So from this it's understood that just like the name of God, there is an advantage according to Kabbalah. The first 2 letters from Ein Os, from one letter off another one, general, the first letter is the most important of the word. But like you have initials, it usually is the first letter. The first letters, those are the most important. The letters of God's name are Yud, then Hey, and then Vav Hey. So the Yud and Hey, that's more important than the Vav and the Hey. Usually these letters also correspond to the 10 spherot, the 10 aspects of God's personality. The Yud and the Hey, that's God's intellect. Vav is the emotions, and Hey is God's speech. So the intellect is the most important thing of a person, right? His intellect, what he thinks, Un siruf a Hey, and siruf one in one combination of it, Hashem Beseder is in its order, Yud and then Hey Vav Hey. I think that's the month of Nisan. Al Derech similarly is another Atziruf Echad Al Chetzi Abed. One second. That's right. The first 2 letters are more important than the second 2 letters. Is that what he's saying? One second. That's right. The first half is more important than the second half of any particular given combination of letters of God's name. So similarly is also an advantage in the month of 1 week more than the other. That's all the months of the year. In general, the first week or the first 2 weeks of every month have some higher spiritual level than the later ones, which so therefore we can see Darmanan Chiluk, and so because of this difference between the first 2 weeks, because they correspond to the first 2 letters of that permutation of God's name of that month, so therefore there's a difference between in law. For instance, there's a lot of people that don't get married in the second half of the month. They don't have marriages in the second half of getting married, etc. The first half of the month and the second half of the month. Also, the first half of the month is the moon is getting bigger, and the last half of the month, the moon is getting smaller. But in the month of IYAR, Zainen Alatag from Chodesh Gleich, every day is equal. This is the same. Why? Because every day is counted the same commandment. And then there must, because in the counting from service of man, the service of our services every day is the same. You have the holiday like that in Tishrei. So the first day of the month is Rosh Hashanah. The 10th day of the month is Yom Kippur, right? The 15th day of the month for the 7 days is Sukkot. So, but those are special days. But in IYAR, every single day is equal. So this month, which seems to be a pretty quiet, benign month, there's no real holidays in this month. Says the Rebbe exactly the opposite. Every day is like a holiday. Every day is a commandment. How can we make all the days equal, the same thing, the same level of holiness? Oivdam is their remez, it's the name of the month, IYAR. What do we have to do to embody and to personify this fact that every day of the month is equal? So we make a blessing good. That's very nice. It's a good thing, religious thing. Says the Rebbe, listen, there's something very deep going on over here in our day-to-day life. The IYAR are the first letters from Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rachel. For Zay Zainen, the Dalid Ragli Amerkava, which it says that these are the 4 feet of the chariot of God, or the throne of God. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Rachel. We'll talk about it in one moment. Vos, there, Remez, the hint is der gebracht euch benigla the Torah halacha. This is also relevant to the legal, religious part of the Torah. What am I doing? 1 minute. Yeah, and the revealed part of the Torah. What does this mean? What is Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Rachel? What's so special about them? I mean, they didn't really do very much as far as Judaism goes. They didn't establish any holidays or do any commandments. Abraham, true, did the circumcision, but the reason we do circumcision is because it's commanded later on by God. But except for Abraham, let's say doing the circumcision, even if you want to say, except for that, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we don't see really how they were, what's it got to do with Judaism today? What's it got to do? We're Jews of the Torah. How is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Rachel? What says the Rebbe? Exactly the opposite. That's the essence of Judaism. That's the attitude we're supposed to have when we do Torah and the commandments. The Indian from a Merkava, the idea of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they were the vehicle for God. Merkava is Zokt and Tanya, like it says in the Tanya, Shekal Evarim, that all their limbs, Kulam Hayakadoshim, they were holy and Muvdalim and separate from this world. In other words, the world did not influence them at all. Their whole thing was to influence the world. Of course, they were in the world, they got married, they had children, they had the tribulations, difficulties, they were certainly in the world. But they were in the world because God put them in the world, and God has a very, very special plan for this physical world. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that's why interesting, in the whole Torah, it doesn't talk about heaven, hell. Doesn't, in the whole entire 5 books of Moses, there's no mention of heaven and hell. And we believe in heaven and hell. It's a part, reward and punishment is a very important part of Judaism. It's very important, but it's not the most important, and it's sort of put on a backfire. There is such a thing. But our main attitude should be that of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Rachel. Namely what? That they didn't think about themselves at all, except in relation to what God wants them to do in the world. Is b'shas men hat klal nit kain when a person doesn't make any self-reckoning, no, that's not the right word to do. When a person does not have any, how do you say, these words slipping in my mind. When a person does not have any selfish interests, Varum, because oich in the inyanim gashmi, because even in the physical things they had, it says, for instance, Abraham was tremendously rich. Yaakov became tremendously wealthy, but the 12, they didn't care about it at all. It was not the chol darachecha. Everything that they did was only to know God. They were rich because God wanted them to be rich. Man is ibrige given. He was totally given over to godliness. Punkt Merkava, just like a vehicle, like a chariot, what do you want to call it? A vehicle, a car. Was calling the whole thing of a car, of a vehicle, a chariot, they say, is only just doing what the driver wants it to do. So Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they felt that they were just vehicles for God. That's the month of IYAR. Demel, then, Zayin Kol Yamim, then all the days will be equal. Vipal, because calling Yanim is Nor, Elokus, because everything is godliness. And not only that, everything is a surprise, because you realize that God is creating the world brand new every instant. So the past never gets you down, and the future never makes you afraid. You're always positive. If so, every day is the same. It's a miracle, the same excitement, same happiness to be alive, the same challenge. By means of this service of being a merkava, by being a vehicle to God, in the month of IYAR, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rachel, as Virter Chodesh, the month will be a connection between the month of Nisan, when the Jewish people got out of Egypt, and the receiving the Torah, when the Jewish people became servants of God on Mount Sinai. Ta'abdun means avodat eved. The Jewish people became the servants of God. God does not want bosses. He does not want leaders. He wants servants. And if one of your works you have to do to be a servant is to be a leader, is good, okay. But the main thing is not to be a leader and not to be a great and not to be rich, even though Abraham had all these things. The main thing of Abraham and every single Jew should be being a servant of God. But derech kabbalat all, in a way of what's called accepting the yoke, just like an ox has this yoke on him and he does whatever the owner wants him to, the driver wants him to, is that Jew does whatever God wants him to do. Can be great, nothing greater than that. By means of that, the ox is connected to the driver. By means of that, we're connected to the Creator. That's called kabbalat all. And this becomes a preparation for the third month, Yarcha Telitai, the third month, the word of the Sivan, which is given, or right to Telitai, which then was given the three-part Torah of Nevi'im and Ketuvim, to the Jewish people that they're called the triple nation, Kohanim, Levites, and Israel. So what's the Rebbe here saying? Every day of this month of IYAR is a preparation month for the receiving of the Torah and a manifestation month for the freedom that we got out when we left Egypt, to use that freedom in order to be servants of the Creator of the universe. Nothing greater than that. Like Abraham, Isaac, Yitzchak, and Rachel were a chariot to God. That's our opportunity this month. Okay, let's jump a little bit higher. We have a couple of minutes left over here. So let's try to jump over here. The next sikha is really very beautiful, but we can cut a little bit. Where is this? Oh. Let's see if we make this. Here we go. The rabbis say that every day and every generation and every day a person is obligated to leave Egypt. The first Rebbe of Chabad added on these words of every day. A person has to see himself as though he's leaving Egypt. Every single day, a person has to relive the going out of Egypt. What does it mean, the going out of Egypt? What are you supposed to do going out of Egypt? It means that you're supposed to go out of your limitations, to not be a slave to anything in the world, but rather to be a slave to the creator of the universe. And the creator of the universe, as we said so many times, he wants to perfect the whole world, and he wants to do it through us. That's what he decided. The Mela, so therefore, Zain and the Allah dry der Manta Pratim, from going out of Egypt, also in the service of man every day. What do we have? We have going out of Egypt, number one. And then after that, we have the counting of the Omer, preparation for the receiving of the Torah. And then we have receiving of the Torah. The beginning of our service in the morning is, we say, Moda'ani. But everyone's supposed to do this, Jews, non-Jews. First thing in the morning, you wake up from bed, wake up from sleep, and you say, I am grateful to you, God, living, existing King, that you have given back my soul with great, mercy. Your faith in me is great. You're supposed to say this every morning. If you don't remember all those words, you can just say, thank you, God, for keeping me alive and believing in me, right? For giving me back my soul. That's hoda'ah. You don't understand anything. I'm alive, and I didn't do it on my own. It's up to you. Erad nit kein Verstand. You don't understand anything or feeling. This is going out of Egypt. It only gives is just a general thank and surrender to God. Dugmas avoda. This is something like going out of Egypt in the month of Nisan, when they didn't know the Jews didn't know anything. They just were taken out. Thank you, God, you took us out. Dernach, after that, we have the servants in prayer called Psuki de Zimra. We say sentences, psalms of King David, certain ones that were chosen by the men of the Great Assembly. And we say blessings, which were made up by the people of the Great Assembly. We say blessings before we say Shema. And we say, Shema Israel, Hashem Elokeinu. This is like the thinking about God, contemplating God. Even the first sentence of Shema Israel, the word Shema Israel, Shema means to understand. It is a commandment for the Jewish people to try to understand God. Shema. Und übermachen the midos, in other words, what by means of this, to work on and refine our character, our emotions, our personality, until we come to a higher level of loving God with all of our heart, loving God with all of our soul, and even loving God with all of our being. Remember, we learned the mimer about that in Likuti Torah. This is something like the month of IYAR. The month of IYAR, the whole month is counting the Omer, which counting the Omer, we said, of the 7 weeks correspond to the 7 sfirot of God, and the 7 days in each week, that corresponds to the 7 aspects within each one of those 7 sfirot of God. Paradigm, that's the word I wanted, paradigm. We have to change our paradigm. Okay. Das ist doch, aber wie ist noch b'mitziuso. This is after a Jew goes out of Egypt, as he doesn't know anything. Then the month of IYAR, you work on yourself, but you have a self. All of a sudden you come into your own, right? Now I'm working right now. I am serving God. I am serving, but there's this I, there's still this ego. You're trying to be like Abraham, Isaac, Yitzchak, and Rachel, IYAR, surrender. But that's the whole month of IYAR, and that corresponds to what's called the preparation prayers we make in the morning. And our prayers, what's called Psuki de Zimra, these psalms of praise, King David, and the blessings before Kriya Shema, and saying Shema Israel. Improving our personality, improving our connection to God. Darnach, afterwards comes the 3rd month. This corresponds to the 3rd month. Shmon Esrei, the standing prayer. Then you're standing like a servant in front of the king. Total surrender. As can nit kein or gornit rain. He can't even speak. Nor Hashem Sapasai Tiftach, we say, God, you open up my lips, and then I'll say your words. This is like the month of Sivan. So we have 3 levels in service of God. First of all is total surrender without understanding anything. without understanding anything, just putting yourself aside totally and saying, I'm nothing, God, you're everything, right? Because you really are nothing. God just took you out of Egypt, nothing. Like waking up in the morning. You wake up in the morning. How did you wake up? I don't know. I just woke up. That's it, right? There's people that go to sleep. They don't wake up. I woke up. That corresponds to the month of Nisan. After that, we work on ourselves. That's like the prayer in the morning, including Shema. We work on our mind. We work on our heart. We think about God. We get excited about God. We appreciate God. We love God. We're in awe of God. That's working on yourself. That corresponds to the month of IYAR. Like we said, every day is working on yourself, doing this commandment of counting the Omer. But finally, the goal is to come to the third month. That's when we receive the Torah. When we receive the Torah, we take all of this improvement that we made on ourselves and all this personality that we've developed. Now we give that to God. Oh, that's a whole different thing. It's like a private in the army and a general in the army, right? Giving over to the king. A private gives over to the king. The king is wonderful. That's very nice, king. But on the other hand, the private has no idea what the king is. The general, he has a little bit of an idea. He's a big general. He gives himself over to the king. Oh, this is very wonderful. That's us on the month of Sivan. After we've worked on ourselves, then we give ourselves over in the month of Sivan when we receive the Torah. Like them, according to this, that meant we can also understand what it says in Mamachras Shabbos and Nit Mamachras Pesach. Bichdei men kenen mevora zayin oich dem nefesh bahamis darf men oich haben a koach elyon bioter. But the Rebbe asked the question, and this is a very, very general question, actually. The commandment is to start counting the Omer, this 50 days, the day after Passover. That's the commandment. But that's not what it says in the Torah. And the Torah doesn't say that. In the Torah, it says very clearly that we have to start counting the day after Shabbat. And there were people called the Tzedukim, and they said that we have to take the Torah at face value. What are you making up these interpretations for? It says we have to start counting after. That's not the only thing that they made trouble. But it says after the Shabbat, we have to do what it says in the Bible. We start counting the Sfirat Omer the day after Shabbat, the first Shabbat after Passover. If Passover falls on Shabbat like this year, then that's wonderful. But if not, then we don't count the day after Passover. That's not what it says in the Bible. We count the day after Shabbat. And they made a lot of trouble with this idea and other ideas also, where they went against what the rabbis said, because that's not the simple meaning, what it says in the Bible. And they were wrong. These Tzedukim, they were wrong. If so, why did God write it in the Torah the day after Shabbat? Why didn't he just say clearly, start counting the day after Passover? Be clear. Says the reason is because the whole purpose of this counting of the Omer is to transform our natural personalities. And in order to transform your natural personality, you have to have a special power from God. And that's Shabbat. Just like going out of Egypt, the Jews were sunk, what's called in the 49th gate of impurity. Therefore, they had to have a tremendous revelation from God and his essence in order to schlep them, to pull them out from the impurity of their own souls, of their own personalities. They didn't want to leave Egypt. And just like it says in the writings of the Arizal, that by means of an angel, God had to take them out himself from Egypt, because an angel wouldn't have been able to take them out. They were too far down. They were too far down. It says if God would have sent an angel to take them out of Egypt, then the angel himself would have been defiled by Egypt. That's how deep it was. So God himself had to take them out. Was thus is also nit mervi their aroiskin from Ra. This is like talking about turning from bad. Turning for bad. An angel wouldn't have been able to take it. God had to take them out himself. Now we're talking about in Sfirat Omer when we're not just running away from bad, we're making over the bad into good. Is a vare that certainly is men darf, or if men having a koach elyon, you have to have very, very high power for sure. Right? It's like the enemies are attacking you, right? The enemies are attacking. So you take guns and you kill them. That's very difficult. Not easy to stand against the enemies, especially when you're outnumbered. But to capture the enemy and transform him to be your friend, who can do a thing like that? You're going to do it. And especially if you're outnumbered 1,000 to 1, you're going to capture the enemy, one person. And how are you going to do that? You really have to have a tremendously high power. Says the Rebbe, that's exactly the point. When the Jews left Egypt, it was like killing the enemy, getting rid of the enemy. In the month of IYAR, we had to take the enemy. Who's the enemy? Ourselves, our own, the Egypt which is inside of us, our own natural desires and tendencies and lusts and fears and things like that, and transform them. Whoa, then you for sure have to have a very high power to do that. You can't do it on your own. Was soll sich kennen herablassen lamata und poil. How can a person possibly get himself down to the point of transforming his own bad? Then you have to have a tremendous power from above. Therefore. Zokt memachros Shabbos. That's why the Torah says the day after Shabbat. Shabbat is the highest level of time. It's even higher than Passover. Aber das is oyer begeder zman. Shabbat is the highest time in time, but it's part of time. It's one of the 7 days. Shabbat is the example of how to go into the world and transform the world, not to leave the world. Not like Passover where they left Egypt. Shabbat is part of nature, but it's above nature. The 7 days of the week is the highest level. Like it says, Al Pasuk Vayechal Elokim B'Yom HaShavi, that God elevated in the 7th day. What was the world missing? The world was missing, the calmness, blessing. Shabbat came and gave blessing and calmness into the world. Menucha from Shabbos is Shayach on an inyan in Olamot. So Shabbat, the holiness of Shabbat is in the world, is part of the world, but it brings the blessing of God into the world and transforms the world, not like Passover did. Passover took the Jews out of the world. Shabbat is part of the world, and the day after Shabbat, this is even higher than Shabbat. This is above the world. So we're taking something above the world, the day after Shabbat, above Shabbat, and that's how we're starting with this power. We can fix ourselves up and do Sfirat HaOmer. This means Shabbat. That's why it says in the Torah that you have to count from the day after Shabbat, even though technically that's not what it means. It means you have to count from the day after Passover. Why does it say Shabbat? Because in order that there can be the power to safartem lechem, to make yourself shine. Safartem also means to shine, sapir. To take these 49 days, the 49 attributes of the animal soul, and refine and transform them, you have to have a power from Machrat Shabbat, the day after Shabbat, above Ishtalshlut, above the creation. So that's why it's so important that if a person wants to refine his personality in a really true way, so true, you can go and do, go to a psychiatrist, do coaching, do whatever it is. But if you really want to transform yourself in a way that you're connected to truth and how do you say, the infinite positivity, you have to pray. Praying is very important. Before a person wants to fix up his bad personality traits, and it's good, go to a coach or go to a friend, go to whatever you want to, but praying to God is important. You have to have a power from above. Without a power from above yourself, you cannot possibly change yourself. You're always going to be stuck. You just rearrange things. But the whole idea of Judaism is not just to be separate from the world. Should not have a bad effect on us. That's going out of Egypt. The idea is supposed to be that we have a good effect on the world, and we start from ourselves. And in order to do that, you have to have a power which is above you. That's called Memachrat Shabbat. The day after Shabbat, then we can do Sfirat HaOmer and improve our personalities and our souls in order that we can receive the Torah and make this world a perfect place with the arrival of the revelation of the Rebbe Melech Moshiach. Now let's learn Hayom Yom for today and Shabbat. Here we go. Oh, the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, received from Reb Mordechai, that he heard it from the Baal Shem Tov. A soul may descend in this world and live for 70 or 80 years just in order to do a Jew a material favor and certainly a spiritual one. God gives us life, 80 years, whatever, just so that we can do a mitzvah. Could be we do a mitzvah when we're 13 years old or whatever. But you're given a gift, free gift, 70 years. The whole reason you're given all this gift is to do sometime in that 70 years, even one good deed. One good deed. Okay, that it's worth it to do one. So do as many good deeds as you can. Make your life meaningful. Here we have justify your existence. The sages said, is this the next thing? Yeah. The sages said, a person should not take leave of his friend unless he has a parting word of Torah. They said this parting word should be a Torah teaching that should be mahalach. You should not take leave. You should not take leave of a person without saying a davar halacha. Halacha means a law, halacha, but halacha also means to walk. Hiluch means to walk, to make progress from one level to another. If you're parting from your friend, which we talk to people all the time, and we stop talking, we separate from the person, right? So you should always try to make some positive remark to encourage and to encourage to inspire. To inspire. Didn't get enough sleep last night. To inspire the person you're speaking to be better, act better, think better, talk better, feel better. In matters of serving the creator of the universe. Such a progression, this implies a superiority of the human soul of the angels. The angels are not walking. The angels do not move. The angels is to stand in one place. That's why when we say the Shema Israel prayer, we put our feet together and stand in one place. That's like the angels. The angels have the advantage that they appreciate God, but we have the advantage that we can do something for the creator. How do we do? What do we do? How do we move? By doing acts of goodness, doing favors for other people, a material favor in general, and a spiritual favor, especially saying a good word, doing a good deed, or even having a good thought about others will bring Moshiach. Now, have a good day and a good Shabbat, a holy Shabbat, and God willing, on Sunday, 8:15, we'll continue our classes. Shalom uvracha. Yechi Adonenu Moreno for Rabbeinu Melech Mashiach L'Olam V'Oed.